So, how is life in France? Second season with Rouen Normandy.
That's the one, yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, sort of the country's a bit more opened up now because when I first came over, it was like full lockdown. Sorry, actually, it wasn't full lockdown, but we pretty much went into lockdown about a month after I got here. So when I came back for the second season and stuff was a bit more open because it was summertime. It was like coming back to a new place. So yeah, definitely second season's a lot better than last year because last year was last year was tough.
Yeah. Was that a bit weird, like when you were signing and trying to move, like you moved from England to France, kind of amidst all that carry on?
Yeah, well, the thing was, it was my decision because I was actually contracted with Ealing for another year. So when coronavirus hit, I stuck around in London for a little bit, and then I actually moved back to Ireland because I just wanted to be back out in the countryside and stuff. And like there was no real time frame of when we'd be back in. Like we got told we might restart like to start in May. So I was like, look, I'll just head back home, see the parents, chill out. Like I can train and stuff, and I'm away from sort of a big city. So,
Mm.
um, and then it was while I was at home, I actually got a phone call from Richard Hill, who was the coach last year. And he basically was interested and wanted to see like where he knew I was contracted for next year, but just wanted to see whether there was any interest like down the line. Um, and then I was kind of like, look, like if I could get out of my contract here because I wasn't enjoying it that much in Ealing, I was kind of like, look, if I could get out now, would there be something on the table for like this coming season? And he was like, yeah. So then we kind of just took it from there. So, but yeah, it was quite. It made moving challenging because like you're having to deal with all the COVID stuff, and then obviously like trying to get visitors to come over. Like it's nice to have people come visit you when you've just moved somewhere new, and obviously that wasn't that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tough, but it was all right. I sort of took it in my stride, and it was all right.
Yeah. And how did he get in touch? Like, how did that come about?
So funnily enough, it was actually the backs coach was a guy called PJ Gidlow, who I played with at London Scottish. My first year at Scottish, he was the 12. And then so I played for 1 year, my first year at Scottish with him. And then he actually signed for Rouen after that season, back when they were in like, I think they might have been in Federal 2 at the time.
Okay.
And so yeah, he had obviously kept tabs on me. I think he was quite good friends with a guy called Mark Bright, who's number 8 at Scottish. Like he's at Richmond now, championship legend, sort of stalwart. So I think the two of them kind of kept in contact quite a bit, and I think he said to PJ about potentially bringing me over. So yeah, that was kind of the connection there. So yeah.
Nice one. And do you speak French?
Yeah, pretty well. Yeah. Like obviously, I was there before when I was in Paris,
Yeah.
but yeah, I did it at school and I quite enjoyed it. So yeah, I'd say I'm at a pretty good level now. So it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. I did in school as well, but I'm absolutely not at any level. So yeah.
Yeah.
And so then you mentioned before when you're in Stad for a year, wasn't it? In the academy
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, it was a hell of an experience. Again, that came about quite funny. Like I was at Lansdowne with you,
Yeah.
under 20s, and didn't have a great year there, and then was kind of obviously I'd always wanted to be a fresh rugby player, but kind of at the end of that year, I was kind of at a bit of a kind of I hadn't had a good year at 20s and kind of didn't really know where I was going, and then got in contact with Nigel Osborne, who was the coach at Sea Point at the time. Because I used to do the French and rugby camp that he did down in France, like each summer, so I knew him pretty well. And kind of had a long conversation with him about kind of what I wanted to do, like sort of rugby wise. And he basically said to me, look, if you come and play for Sea Point, like they were playing in 2A at the time. He was like, if you come and play for us, like it'll be playing adult rugby, like you'll be playing week in, week out. It'll do your development a lot of good playing adult rugby rather than doing another year 20s. Sort of said that he had some contacts in France that he could potentially like speak to and try and get me sort of a look in somewhere. So then basically out of nowhere in like March time, I think it was, I was sitting in UCD, like just doing what students do. And I get a phone call from Nigel saying, "Can you be in Paris for tomorrow morning?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, I've got you a trial at Stade Francais." And I was like, "Okay." So basically, rung my parents and were like, "Can I go to Paris tomorrow?" So literally hopped on a flight. I think it was that evening actually. Flew over, stayed with this African guy who was in the academy at the time. And then the following day, basically met up with Paul Warwick and Stan Wright, who were there at the time, and got a lift. This is where it just gets absolutely bonkers. Like, got a lift to the Stade de France because they were playing against, I think it was Clermont at the weekend, and that was like their big game, and they were playing at the Stade de France. So, travel with those two lads to the stadium. I'm in like random like Leinster kit that I was like, I'll just wear Leinster kit to look somewhat cool. Like, so I've rocked up to this stadium and like coming in and like there's bloody like journalists everywhere. They're like looking at me being like, who the hell is this kid? Like wearing Leinster kit. So like rock into the change rooms and like that's the first time I met anyone. I haven't met any coaches or anything.
Wow.
And I've like walked into the changing room and obviously there were some pretty big players there at the time. Like, and lads are just looking at me and I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, this is just bonkers. Like, you got lads like Sergio Parisse just looking at me being like, are you lost? Like, what are you doing? And again, like, I didn't really know what I was doing, like, because Nigel had kind of been like, oh yeah, you're going to do a trial, but like he hadn't told me anything more, so I was going in completely blind. I was like, what am I doing here? So then coach came over and was like, right, you're going to go into the, like, you'll be in the dead ball area just doing some stuff with our skills coach who was Diego Dominguez at the time.
Oh wow.
So again, that's another one where I was like, Jesus Christ, like I'm going to be working with this guy, like fuck. So then went out on the pitch. They were all doing their team run and I've just gone down the end and just done some skills stuff with Diego. And then at the end, he was like, right, just watch the rest of the team run and then just join in with the kickers at the end and just follow them around. So basically waited for that. Then, just joined in with them, took a few kicks, just coaches were kind of watching me. And then they basically thanked me for coming and I was straight on a flight out of there. With no other, like, they didn't really say anything more. They were just like, yeah, cheers for coming. Thanks. We're happy with you, whatever. But like, see you later. So, and they'd said they'd be in touch or whatever, but so then I flew back and then probably a couple of weeks went by and I was like, look, it was a cool experience, but that was it. And then again, another phone call out of the blue from Nigel being like, yeah, can you be in Paris again? Like literally like tonight. I was like, yeah, and so went back over again. And this time it was like a kind of more S&C focused thing. So I did like strength tests, speed test, all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of just went from there. And then they were basically like, yeah, look, we can offer you something. So, and then just sort of talked it through. And then went for it from there. So, and then that was kind of the crux of it. It was a pretty mad way of getting in, but like that was sort of the opportunity that I just needed. And then it all just sort of went from there.
That's mad. So then the first time you're over, it was a team run like the night before a game, was it?
It was literally the Friday. I think they were playing on the Saturday. So it was the Friday morning team run. And I've just rocked in there being like, hey lads, you all right?
Yeah. So, and they just did like half-hour skills or whatever, a few kicks, and then you're gone back.
Yeah, literally. Like they were lovely about it. They were like, yeah, we're happy, like cool. But then like there was no like kind of, we'll have a think and we'll tell you tomorrow or we'll come back to you next week. It was just like, cheers for coming, thanks, see you later. So like I literally got in the car with the boys and they dropped me to the train station that was near the ground and just went straight back to the airport and was out of there. So like it was very much like get in, get out. Like so,
and had you sent them over a tape before that or
no, nothing at all. No, it was literally off Nigel's word because he knew Richard Poole Jones was the director of rugby at the time.
Yeah.
So Nigel knew him quite well. So I think he basically said to him, "Look, have a look at this guy." But there was no footage, no nothing. So it was completely blind.
That's madness. Like you think about like even looking at someone's like clips, it's like
Yeah,
you wouldn't be sure because you can put together like good clips and you can have a bad
yeah,
game and still find some good ones, but they just literally like, oh look at this Irish kid and
yeah.
did a few
Literally, yeah,
kicks and it's like, yeah,
yeah.
we'll take a punt on him.
I know, it's mad.
Yeah,
Thinking back to it, I think at the time I didn't really think it was that crazy, but now
it's
like
insane.
looking back, I'm like, that was absolutely mental.
Yeah, yeah. You're
Yeah.
meant to be playing for Sea Point and then to Stad.
Well, that's the thing,
And
and the thing with that was because I flew back. I think it was I flew back on the Friday, and then I played for Sea Point then on the Saturday, and like I've rocked up, and boys were like, "Oh, you've just been kicking in the Stade de France, like it's Stade Francais. Now you're out in Kilboggan Park kicking in
yeah,
2A." Like it was mental, absolutely mental.
mad. And so
Yeah.
then you did you sign a 1 year academy? Was that what they
Yeah,
did?
that was it. Yeah, 1 year. Yeah. So, but actually, I actually managed to get quite a lot of opportunities because
Yeah.
it was the year they signed Mornay Stain. But when they signed him, they didn't realize that obviously he had like the Rugby Championship or whatever it was called. I think it was still the Tri Nations back then. And then he stayed on in South Africa for till the November internationals. So like he didn't come in the gap between the Rugby Championship and the November
Mm.
internationals. I'm not sure whether he was injured or whatever, but so I was basically essentially I was playing 10 at the time. I was essentially second choice 10 for like probably till end of November probably. Um, so that was class. Like even just like training at that level, like being like the 10 on the other 15 was like an unbelievable experience for me. Like so, and then like managed to get a debut in top 14 and played a good few European games as well. So that was deadly. Like it was, I couldn't believe it. Like I was actually like, what is happening here? Like everything just happened so quickly. So, yeah, and then it all just sort of went from there. And then even when he came back, like I was still kind of being kept involved, like in and around the first team. Like quite a lot of like 24th man, which like means a lot to you at that
Oh
age.
yeah.
Like you start to grow out of it as you get older. You're like, I don't want to be 24th man, but when you're that age, you're like just soaking everything up. So
Yeah.
it's class. So yeah, no, it was class. Like couldn't have got any more opportunities really. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. And did you feel like way out of your depth? Because like adult rugby, like the step up, so from school, like even the school to 20s, like we were playing Lansdowne 20s, it's not like a cakewalk, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then going from Lansdowne 20s to Sea Point, like that must have been a little bit of a step up because you're tackling men, and even though
Yeah.
it's a lower level,
Yeah.
but then you're going to play with Stad.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah, like when I first went over there, like start of preseason, I was like, there was probably I'd say it was probably a couple of weeks where I was literally just like, what am I doing here? Like just like looking around. It was more just like looking around at the other players and being like, I watch you on TV, like I know all about you. Like this is
yeah,
crazy. Like how am I in the same changing room as you? But then I think like when you're in that environment, it kind of like you kind of have to just get up to speed. So it kind of brings out the best in you, I think, because if you don't, then you just fall by the wayside. So I think quite quickly I kind of just got over the fact of being like, wow, like I'm playing with this guy or I'm playing with this guy. And it was just like you kind of had to just tell yourself, look, I'm here for a reason. Like they obviously
yeah,
think I'm good enough to be here. And just like do my own thing and just get on with it. So yeah, there was a lot of like sort of that feeling of being quite starstruck at the start, but then I think after a while you just realize that these guys are human and like they're good lads, and yeah, like and a lot of them were very good with me, like kind of took me under their wing and like looked after me well. So yeah, no, it was grand after probably the first couple of weeks of being like, wow, like rabbit in headlights kind of stuff. So yeah.
yeah. And you mentioned earlier that like you wanted to be a professional rugby player, like so many people. But was there a
Yeah.
moment when you were like a teenager that you decided that you were going to go for that, like, and not have other options, or like you were gonna, because you probably left UCD, did you? Like left your
Yeah.
studies, like you
Yeah.
left that, and you just
Mm.
that was there a moment when you decided?
Um, I think like I played quite a lot of soccer when I was younger, and I was involved in that like kind of development squads and like kind of getting like Irish trials and stuff like that. So that was, I'd say, football was the number one growing up till I was about probably 15 or 16, and then I was in like a southeast development kind of squad, and we used to train like 2 or 3 times a week down in Wexford. And I remember, I think I had just turned 16 because it would have been because I was in 4th year of school and I just started playing like SCT rugby. And obviously that's where like you start doing like proper gym and needing to get like bigger like pretty quickly. And obviously that was kind of having a bit of an impact on my football because obviously you need to be more light and sort of agile and stuff like that. So I remember I had a meeting, like a kind of performance review meeting with the soccer coaches, and they were like, look, it's kind of getting to the stage where you need to decide between rugby and soccer. And they basically said, look, from what we see of you, like you're not going to make it in soccer because obviously it's very, very, very hard to make as a pro soccer player. So they were like, look, we think you should go down the rugby route. So, yeah, that was, once I heard that, I was kind of like, right, yeah, I think rugby is probably the way forward. And also I think football, I used to get quite stressed playing soccer, whereas rugby, I didn't really have that kind of feeling of like nervousness kind of when I would play. Like sometimes when I'd be going out to play a soccer match, I'd be like, oh, like it was all very negative thinking, whereas like rugby, I'd always be kind of like just enjoying myself. So I think that was probably the moment. So yeah, probably when I was like 16 or so. And then I think it helped as well, like obviously being in Kilkenny College and playing senior cup rugby when I was in 4th year. I think that kind of gave me a big kind of shot of confidence, being like, you can play 2 years underage for the cup team and like you can hold your own. So I think that it was probably from then. And then yeah, like from then on, I kind of was just like, right, I need to put in the work to do it. And then like you say, like when I was in UCD, obviously I dropped out with a year to go. Like I only had 1 more year to finish. But my way of thinking of it was that like that kind of opportunity, like you can't really pass it up. So because even just the thought of like living in Paris for a year, like what that would like do for you, like just to grow up and stuff like that. So yeah, it wasn't really a big decision. I was, as soon as it came up, I was just like definitely going for it. And like my parents were fully supportive of it as well, because they knew like how much it meant to me. So they were like, look, if this is the decision you want to do it. So and luckily it's worked out all right.
Yeah, for sure. And why do you think that with the soccer and rugby, like you're so different going into games?
It's a good question. I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know. I just always felt more comfortable on a rugby pitch than a soccer pitch. I literally I couldn't tell you why. It was just I just knew there'd be times in like playing soccer where I wouldn't want the ball, or I'd be shying away from stuff or hiding. Whereas rugby, I never really felt like that. I'd always want to have touches on the ball and always want to be sort of involved in the thick of it. Like, so yeah, in terms, I don't really know why I felt like that, but yeah.
And you mentioned that like with the Lansdowne 20s that like you didn't have a great, or you said you didn't have a great year, but we're like, geez, when I was playing, I would have thought like you had a brilliant year, you know, like, cause like you were class, but what was that? Was that like you didn't feel you were kicking on, or like weren't getting looks with the first team, or like why do you think that?
I'm not entirely sure. I think part of me feels like, I think coming out of school and like like I said to you earlier, like having that confidence of playing senior cup rugby in 4th year. So obviously that gives you that big shot of confidence when you're a young lad. Like you sort of feel like you're the boy, like, and then obviously you leave school, obviously did stuff at Leinster, like underage, whatever. Then obviously you go into like going to university, looking after yourself, that kind of stuff. And then with Lansdowne 20s, I just kind of, I don't know, maybe I slightly got ahead of myself and thought, oh, I'm the boy, like I've done this in school, like played a few games, Leinster 20s, Leinster 18s, whatever it is. And yeah, maybe just kind of got a bit ahead of myself. I don't think it never affected my training that I would do myself. So like I would always get up and go to the gym in UCD early, like, and then do my extra sessions. So it never actually affected that. But I think potentially just like how I was going about myself, like in games and at training when I was actually with the team, I think I maybe thought that I should be further than I was. So yeah, maybe like getting games to the first, or like being involved in the first. And I think maybe I just like psychologically just kind of thought that I was a bit further on than I was. And yeah, like from my point of view, I thought I had an absolutely horrendous year. Like I just did not think I played well at all. And I think it was then at the end of that year, it was kind of the realization that it was like, you need to know where you haven't made it. Like you're a nobody. Like you need to just, like, every opportunity you get to play on a rugby pitch, no matter what level it is, you need to stand out and be good to get noticed. So then, and that was something that Nigel said to me as well, was that like, yes, it might be perceived as being like, oh, you've gone from Lansdowne under 20s to Division 2A club. Like that's weird. Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
But his point to me was that if you play very well and stand out in that league, that people will take notice. So I think it was just that changing of mindset, that every time you go onto a pitch to play your absolute best, because you never know who's watching, you never know what might happen. Whereas I think that year playing 20s at Lansdowne, I was potentially thinking, oh, like I should be here, or I should be there, or should have got picked for Ireland 20s, or I should have, and I was just thinking of all this stuff that like could have been feeling kind of hard done by. So yeah, I think it was definitely like that summer after 20s, just having a reset and being like, no, like you need to change the way you're thinking and really like knuckle down whenever you're playing a game. This is the be all and end all. And same with training as well, like give it your all in training. So
yeah.
It's
Some good ones there. Like the point you made about every time you play is an opportunity and you never know who's watching. And it's so true, because like you can often, when you're younger, I think as well, go through the motions a little bit. And you're enjoying it, but like kind of a little bit going through the motions, but yeah, you never know who's watching. And it's interesting as well, like for people listening, so Lansdowne would have, I don't know, at that point would have been one of the best clubs in the country. Like probably,
they were.
They were. They would have won the AIL like the next year. And us two were on the 20s. Like you played Leinster 20s, I played Connacht, and there was a lot. Like our Lansdowne under 20s team was unreal. Like, wasn't it? Like so many good players. So it's a really interesting one in that I was the exact same, but then there's like guys like Jordy Murphy ahead of you in the first team, and you had Craig Ronaldson. It's like
unbelievable players. It's like unbelievable players. So like, who am I to be like, oh yeah, I should be playing in front of him? Like, it's just,
but you do think that.
Do you think? Oh yeah, you do. Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing as well, because I was the exact same. I was like, and Bouch as well, like different guys. I was like, fuck, I should be in there. Like, Jesus, this is ridiculous. And then whatever. But it's interesting that Nigel, that guy, like told you to make that move, and it worked out, because I would have been the same. I would have been like, I remember hearing you're going, I was like, what is he at? Like, is he mad?
A lot of people were, and that was the thing. Like, I needed to, that was part of my own like psychological thing, was dealing with lads being like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you signing for C Point? Because like you know my friend Padjo, he would have been like, he was like, lad, what are you thinking? Like, why are you going to C Point? And it just, I had to deal with so much of that to then be like, right, look, it doesn't matter what other people think. This is me. This is what I'm doing. As long as I look after it. And it kind of changed from looking at outside to then looking within and being like, no, like if I look after my own shit, then whatever happens. But you just got to focus on yourself and do you. And then like we say, like you never know who's watching, who's going to take notice.
Yeah, 100%. And another thing is that it doesn't matter so much what level you're playing at. Like you said, like you'll stand out. Like I've seen it like in America, Canada, like these just different places where people go from, even with Lansdowne. I remember Clive Ross, before he signed with Lansdowne, was with De La Salle Palmerstown, which were like barely AIL, like junior club, I think, even. And then went Lansdowne, then went Ulster. Like it doesn't, people get caught up, I think, on what level they're at all the time. Whereas as you say, it's just play well and it'll work out, If you're good enough, you'll end up where you should be. If you 100%. Stick with it long enough, that's the way it is. That's the way I see it anyway. Yeah, 100%. And so then at Stad, you spent a year there and then headed to the championship in England. Why? Like you said, I don't know, did you play 7-8 games? I remember watching you as well. And did you play in like an Amlin quarter final?
Yeah,
You're getting good looks, but then Why did you head off to the championship after a year?
So it was basically from that Amlin quarter final. So we played against Harlequins, and they were being coached by Conor O'Shea at the time. And that was, funnily enough, that was actually my first ever game at fullback in any kind of rugby. Like,
Yeah.
and I'd never, like, it's not like I'd played a bit of training. Like, literally, I had never played there ever.
Yeah.
And next one, I'm getting chucked out in a quarter final Amlin in like a pretty rotated team going up against Quins of full strength, because they were targeting it like it was literally their full strength team.
Yeah.
So there's me playing my first ever game of 15 up against Mike Brown, just being
No
like,
clue.
class, can't wait for this.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed it, and I think potentially the fact that I was playing there for the first time kind of took a lot of the pressure off. I was just like, look, I've never played here before, like, so it could go completely wrong, but let's just give it a go. So yeah, I played 15 and played pretty well. We did pretty well for about 60 minutes, and then they pulled away a little bit at the end. But yeah, it was basically from that game. Conor O'Shea kind of came up to me afterwards, because he obviously knew I was Irish, and just we had a little bit of a chat on the pitch after, and then I met up with him then a couple of weeks later in Dublin, and he was sort of saying, like, would I consider signing for a team in England, and at the time Quins and London Scottish had like a kind of partnership thing, so Scottish would get a lot of the Quins young players and like vice versa. So he was like, look, would you consider coming to England? And at the time I had a very sort of negative view on second division rugby in France, because that would have been the other option, was to probably sign from Massey, who had just come up to Pro D2. So it would have been to sign from Massey for probably 2 years. And at the time I was kind of like, oh, French second division rugby, like, it's a bit like it's just fights every week.
Yeah,
like,
that's what the perception is when we were growing up.
As a forward, it's probably good to like toughen you up a bit, but as a back, like, you're probably not getting up to much going over there. So yeah, looking, but like at the time I was like, nah, I don't really want to go to Pro D2. So as soon as I heard the opportunity in London, I was like, yeah, pretty keen for that. So then, yeah, I met up with the coaches of Scottish, and at the time as well, there was a hell of a coaching setup of Scottish. So they had Mike Friday as director of rugby, Pete Richards as head coach and backs coach, and James Buckland as well. So that was like a pretty good setup for me. Like, so I spoke to them and sounded pretty good. So I signed a 1 year deal there. And the idea of it was to go over there, do well in the championship, and then hopefully Quins to come in then after the year and take me from there. But I think, was it that year Conor O'Shea, did he move on that year, or was it the year after? Can't remember. Yeah, it was something I can't remember. But yeah, I basically at the end of that season then their Quins had sort of said, nah, look, we're not interested. So that was a bit of a disappointment. Especially as I sort of thought I'd had quite a good year, sort of as my first year sort of in proper pro rugby, where I was like fully like professional and like playing pretty regular, well, absolutely very regular. I think I played every game that season. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing with that, and then had a couple of sniffs from a couple of other teams, and just nothing ever really came to it. So then ended up signing for another year. And then again, same kind of story, just constant sniffs, but never anything definite. So yeah, that was that.
Yeah. And so was the championship like a lot of like 1 year deals, because it's guys, a lot of guys who are looking to move on from there.
Yeah. So usually, the longest you get a lad would be 2 years, and they'd kind of be a little bit older. So yeah, most of the young lads would be taking 1 year just to give themselves options to move on. So yeah, mainly 1 year deals.
Yeah. And back then, I know things changed in the last like 2 years with the RFU, and they kind of like, did they cut a bit of the funding? But back then when you were playing, like, from what I gathered, like, was there good money in the championship? Like,
there was, yeah. So when I first joined Scottish, like, we had an unbelievable team. Like, we made the playoffs and pushed Worcester pretty far, who then got promoted to the Premiership. So yeah, like there was quite a lot of money in it. So the owner, like the main money man at Scottish was, he own Tesco at the time, I think, or he was the owner of Tesco. So yeah, like there was a lot of money in the club, and like we had lads like, Neil Best, who played at
Yeah,
Ireland.
yeah.
Yeah, so Bestie was there. Like we had some pretty decent guys. So yeah, like my 3 years I was at Scottish, they were very healthy financially, and so was the league. To be fair, like most, it was fully professional for my first 3 to 4 years. I think there was
Yeah.
no part-time teams at all. And then the year I joined Ealing was when it first started. And I think that's when Richmond came up and they were part-time.
Yeah.
And then it just gradually kind of slipped, and then obviously the RFU cut the funding, and that killed a lot of teams. So, and then you look at the way the champ is today, and it's a completely different league. Like it's like most of the teams are part time. Like you have Ealing, Jersey, Doncaster, and Pirates, who are probably the only 4 like fully functioning professional teams, and then the rest are all part time. So it is a shame, because like you look at English rugby, like it should have a fully functioning second division, like it really should. Like there's some big clubs there, and there's some big fan bases. Like you look at a team like Bedford, like they got a massive following. Like they get like 4,000 or 5,000 at games.
Do they?
Yeah, and they're fully part time. Like it's mad. Like yeah, so I don't know. It's a whole, you need a whole different podcast to get into the RFU, but no, like from my point of view, my time in the championship, luckily the 3 years I was at Scottish, it was run well, and then when I went to Ealing, obviously I was lucky to be at the most sort of the top team in the league, with the exception of the team that came down from the Premiership each year. But so yeah, I was quite lucky. But yeah, like there's some stories of some lads who just get like very badly treated at clubs, or just not looked after right. So
it is like nearly sad, because you want rugby to grow, and you look at France, like Pro D2, Federal 1, even Federal, like Fed 2, even like Fed 1 would have a lot of like pro teams, wouldn't it? And then like I was listening to Eddie Jones speak recently, and he was saying how rugby has not grown as much as we'd like to think it has over the last like 15 years or whatever. And you look at soccer, obviously, but you want, like, England should have a second division, like a solid second division, and you need these like more opportunities to play professional rugby, put it that way.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that England needs to do with their rugby is they need to change. So like they need to have the Premiership on at certain times and the Championship on at different times, so there's never a clash, because that's, for me, that's one of the biggest problems they have, is that like you'll have, so say when I was at London Scottish, which is just down the road from Harlequins, like there'd be days where like we'd be playing at the exact same time, and like a lot of fans want to go and watch both teams, like because they live in the area and they like watching rugby. So all you have to do is move one to a Friday night and one to a Saturday, or one to a Saturday, one to a Sunday. Whereas they just don't seem to want to do it. Whereas in France, like there's a complete, like it's completely separate. So like Pro D2 is played, there's 2 prime games on a Thursday, the rest are all on Friday. You might have one on a Sunday, and then top 14 is literally exclusively Saturday night, and then there's maybe like 1 or 2 games on a Sunday, so there's never a clash. So it's like from Thursday to Sunday you have constant sport. So like if you're a rugby fan, you can watch a game Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. So it's just like you have everything you want, like whereas in England they just seem to want to do everything Saturday 3:00, and it's like it doesn't really work. Like, so
that's the way to do it in France, because American football in the States is the same. So it's Thursday night NFL game, Friday night high school football, Saturday college football, Sunday NFL, Monday night NFL. So you can watch American football, and people do, like, high school is huge, college is huge, obviously.
Massive.
And that's what rugby needs. That's interesting that France do it. And I think Ireland is similar. Like AIL is so good. Even looking back now that I've been gone a few years, but like the quality of rugby is so good. And like they're just kind of like cannibalizing themselves by having it at same time as a Leinster game, and they need to market it a bit better. And
100%. I think with the AIL as well, they need to get like these fringe players playing in it, because like they're getting nothing. You can train in an environment for the week, but like you need to play a game. Like get them out to the clubs. Like it's ridiculous.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like it's crazy. Like and you hear all these chat now about people, like, and they talk about their minutes, and like certain players have played like 50 minutes of rugby.
Oh, it's mental. It's mental.
It's mad. Yeah, I think the provinces need to do a bit like the IRFU, I think, need to do a bit more work and like tell the provinces, these guys from like numbers 28 to 40 in the squad, they got to play. They got to move down. Then you can market a bit better and get people paying a tenner in the gate and grow a bit more. But anyway, yeah. And so then when you went to Ealing, you were there for 3 years.
3 years.
And did you sign? Was it like 1 years again?
No, so Ealing. I signed two years. So signed a 2 year at Scottish, and then at the end of that 2 years, then signed another 2, and only did one of them. So yeah. And yeah, that was quite a nice, like, it kind of felt like a bridge step. So it was kind of like when I was at Scottish, I was like, obviously I want to try and get a Premiership gig or get something back home. And then when Ealing came in, it was kind of like that middle ground where they were kind of like the top Championship club outside the Premiership.
Yeah.
So it was quite, because obviously, like, as I said, like my first year at Scottish was a really successful year, but then the next 2 kind of we faded off quite a lot. So it was nice to kind of get playing with like the top Championship side. And it was just a shame that we got close a couple of times to beating the Prem team that came down, and like we won the BNI Cup and the Championship Cup, but just never could get that win against the Premiership side. So, but no, in terms of the facilities and like the coaching and the way the club was run, it was very much like a top level rugby club. And like they literally have just gone on from strength to strength since I've left, which is good to see. But no, it was good. It was a good move at the time. Like it was good, and I enjoyed it up until probably the 3rd year, and then just kind of fell out of love a little bit. And then, just kind of felt like I needed to get a break and get back to France. So,
So what did you kind of fall out, like you say, fall out of love, fell out of favor a bit with just weren't getting picked as much?
Yeah, just with the head coach, just wasn't. We didn't really see eye to eye on sort of what he wanted me to do and what I wanted and stuff like that. So, which happens. So, and then I went on loan. Just in the start of the new year, which would have been start of 2020, I went on loan to Bedford for 3 games, just because I literally hadn't played all year. Like I think I played maybe 10 minutes of a cup game, and that was it. And then I ended up getting sin binned in that game as well. Literally came on and was like, right, this is my chance to do something. And about 2 minutes later, I've got sin binned for a high tackle. So apart from that, like I literally hadn't played all year. So then it got to Christmas time and was just like, right, the coach came up to me and was just like, look, we need to send you out on loan to get some minutes. So went to Bedford, played 3 games for Bedford, and then ended up getting called back because we had like injury crisis. So came back in, and then first game back got man of the match, which was kind of like a bit of a middle finger to the coach. Yeah, it was like a middle finger to the coach. Like, I'm back. So, and then to be honest, coronavirus came in at the worst time because like I played like maybe 2 more games after that and played pretty well in them. And was starting to enjoy it again and was sort of back in favor. And then coronavirus hit, and then everything just stopped, and it was just kind of like, and then kind of when I went home, then it was then that I kind of like looked at the bigger picture and was like, look, I'm not really enjoying it at the club. So but yeah, it's funny.
It's funny. It's so funny when you said there about getting coming on for 10 minutes and getting a yellow card. It's like I'd have the exact same experience once. I was playing with Lansdowne, played like every game this season with like 2-3 games to go. Tyke Byrne came back from Leinster and then was picked ahead of me. I got on for 10 minutes, 3 minutes in, shoulder charge, forearm to the face, yellow card. And it's like, you're just trying, it's like, what can I do? Like you're trying to do everything. And it's like, the worst thing is when you're trying to do stuff, you never do well.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, because I went to try and put a massive shot in a lad. Yeah. I normally, like any other day, I would just go low and tackle him. I was like, I need to make a name for myself here. It's funny.
That's so funny, yeah. And so then I saw on your LinkedIn that you were working in recruiting a bit towards the end with Ealing. Was that?
Yeah,
what was that?
That was just. So do you know Craig Trenier actually?
I know, but I know someone. It was Paul Mullen or someone mentioned him to me, or like friend of a friend, we'll say.
Yeah. So basically, So Craig Trenier runs the company. So basically, he signed for Ealing my 3rd year. and obviously that was when I wasn't really playing that much. And I was good friends with him, and he was just like, "Oh, if you want to come in and do a bit of work experience, just to like see whether you like it or not." So yeah, I went in for probably, I'd say it was only like a day a week for maybe a month or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of gave me a taste of like that sort of life after rugby, and yeah, it was quite enjoyable, but wouldn't be something that I'd want to do. But it was obviously just good just to get some kind of something going on outside of rugby. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that was what that was about.
Do you have any idea what you would like to do? I know it's a good few years away yet, but
yeah, touch wood.
yeah.
Got a few, well, maybe one or two things. I would quite like to open up a coffee shop. I've got quite into coffee just from lockdown. Sort of self-taught myself a few tricks on the old espresso machine. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I wouldn't mind potentially opening up a coffee shop. And then as well, I've just started doing a mental health course through the Open University.
Cool.
So started that in September. So I'm like a bit into that. Don't know where that'll lead me. I'm more just doing it just out of sort of curiosity, and I find it quite interesting, rather than wanting to go into that kind of field. So, but I don't know. I'll kind of see where it takes me and go from there. But yeah, there's nothing, with the exception of setting up a coffee business. There's nothing majorly jumping out at me. So
yeah.
I'll just try and keep rumbling on the rugby pitch as long as I can.
Keep playing to your 40s.
Yeah, keep putting it off.
Yeah. What kind of stuff are you doing in the course? That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so it's at the moment it's kind of general mental health. So at the moment I'm doing stuff on like ADHD and addictions, and like autism, stuff like that. But once I do, so basically I've taken my credits from UCD, so I'm doing it in the Open University, which is based in the UK. So it's all fully online. So basically I took my credits from my course in UCD, and basically you can put them into this like kind of like a generator thing, which then shows you where like you could potentially go with the credits you have, what courses are kind of suited to it. And then you can kind of take credits off the total credit amount that you need. So I basically come in like at the end of second year. So I have to do a 30 credit module, which I'm doing now to finish second year. And then I go into third year where I can like specialize a bit more. So I want to kind of look at it more from like a sports performance side of view. But at the moment it's very much like general mental health and kind of quite like biology focused on like the brain structure and stuff. So it's quite in depth at the moment, but then it should get a little bit more specific and a bit more interesting then in my final year. So yeah, like I mean, so far I found it quite good, because I was a little bit worried going back to kind of education, having been out for so long, just like how I manage my time and actually get around to doing it, and not just sitting in coffee shops playing cards with the boys and wasting time as you do. But no, I've actually found it all right, and I've done two assignments so far and done pretty well in them. So yeah, it's been all right, and I know the main thing is I'm enjoying it. Like I'm finding the content quite interesting. So yeah, no, it's been good.
Good. That's so important, to enjoy what you're doing. Like so many people go into college courses, it's like, what are you doing? Like, oh, just doing this. And it's like, But yeah. And so what kind of stuff do you get up to outside of playing? You're studying, playing cards with the boys?
The main stuff is studying, and obviously, as I said, with my coffee kind of business idea, I'm kind of trying to sort of speak to as many people as I can sort of in that industry. So there's quite a good specialty coffee shop in Rouen, so I'm quite good friends with the guy who runs that. So I sort of go in there and kind of sort of practice on his machine and just see how the sort of running of the business goes.
Cool.
Which is quite interesting to see. Obviously, it's from a French point of view as well, like with their business rules and stuff like that, and rent and all that, which is slightly different. But no, it's kind of very much that, and then just sort of Rouen as well is quite a historic city. Like there's quite like a lot of nice old buildings and stuff. So quite like just strolling around the town and just checking the place out. There's a lot of kind of hidden gems. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting up to at the moment. I've managed to wean myself off the PlayStation days. I used to just sit in front of the PlayStation all day, but those days are kind of over now. So
yeah, me too. I'm the exact same, thankfully. Yeah, a couple of years ago, just what did you play?
Like Call of Duty, FIFA,
Same.
same old, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just hit a point and you're like, come on, I need to start
Yeah.
doing some actual constructive stuff in my
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, I was the exact same. It's like it was up until like 3 years ago. Yeah, it's like just playing a lot of Call of Duty. What is it, Warzone, and then
Warzone,
FIFA, and it's like gets to a point. It's like, Brian, all right, it's like get 25, 26, 27. It's like gotta start. Not playing 2-3 hours of PlayStation every day.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how is Pro D2? So like, remember we were saying there, like when we were growing up, say teenage, whatever, when you think of Pro D2, it's literally like just a bit of rugby, lots of scrapping, and 1 to 10 man rugby.
Yeah.
But what's your experience of it been like?
I'll tell you one thing. I've found it very, very physical. Like way, way more physical in the championship. And then like I'd say, yeah, it's just like there's a lot of big boys just like carrying hard. It's funnily enough, like when you think of like French rugby, you kind of think like, oh, jouer, like lads just doing what they want. But to be honest, I found it quite like it's weird. Almost like sometimes it'll light up and somebody will do something outrageous, and then it just it just kicks off a chain of events, and just like there's just madness on a pitch. Like there's just lads doing what they want, throwing mad offloads, like pulling off unbelievable stuff. But then it'll just like suddenly just switch back, and it'll just be kind of boring and kind of a bit of a kind of a bore fest. So yeah, it's funny. It keeps you on your toes, put it that way, because like I feel the French don't like structure, so they don't like being told, right, we're gonna have a line out here, we're gonna go 2 phases the same way, then we're gonna come back, then we're gonna like they don't like that. Like, so no. they just want to go, right, look, let's just play and we'll see where we end up. So like for me, like defending as a fullback, like when I was sort of playing in England, you'd sort of read the way kind of teams are going to play, so you kind of know roughly where they're going to be. Whereas like in France, you just kind of like, you just got to expect anything. You expect a tight head prop to be calling for the ball on the blind side and getting it and throwing a miss pass to the winger. Like it's just crazy stuff happens. So I think it's just, I think the best way I can describe it is it's just mad. It's a mad league. Like you see such crazy things. Like I don't know if you saw the video of the winger for Nevers last year lifting up the referee at the end of a game. You might have seen it. It went viral. It was like they'd won like right at the death. Like
I did. And
the ref is blown up, and he's just come up behind him, just lifting him up like that. And the ref's just like, what?
What are you doing? It's
just like that sort of stuff just happens, and it's just it's those kind of moments where you're just like, what is going on in this league? Like, but no, it's been very enjoyable. Like the thing that I really like about it is the fact that it's a very like. Obviously, I played 6 years in the second division in England, and you might as well be invisible. Like it doesn't really exist. Didn't really get any attention. Like crowds are very low, with the exception of 1 or 2 teams, and there's not really any kind of interest in it. And you kind of feel like when you're playing sometimes in the championship, you're kind of like, why am I actually playing? Like what's the point? Because if you're not pushing for promotion, and like you're not in a relegation battle, and you're just kind of playing a game, and it's like, it's professional rugby, but it's like you're playing in front of maybe 1,000 people, and it's like, do these people actually really care? Like they're not, it's not that real kind of like, you're playing in front of fans who care about how the team does, and if the team loses, they're genuinely in a bad mood for like the week until they get to their next home game. Whereas like in France, like if we lose a home game, like you could walk into town and you might be doing your shopping, and somebody will come up and be like, oh, like that game of the weekend wasn't good enough, like we have to win next week. And you're like, it kind of gives it more meaning, and you're kind of like, right, like, and it makes you kind of appreciate more that like when you go out there to play, that like it's more than just like you and the team. It's like very much the whole town is like with you. So yeah, I think that's one thing I really like, is that like everywhere you play, you're playing in front of a lot of people, and a lot of people that care. Like there's some pretty like hostile places that we play, like where it's almost like a football atmosphere, which is cool. So yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest things, and was probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to go back to France. Was just that kind of feeling that like rugby matters more to the people. And yeah, I think that for me was kind of something that I quite like, is just sort of tapping into like the supporters. So yeah, I think that's definitely probably one of the main things, is the kind of atmospheres and stuff.
Yeah, that's cool that you're like playing for the town. Like, and
Yeah.
that there's people behind you. I know what you mean by like, say when you're in England or whatever, it's like, what do you do? And like those games that don't matter mean anything. It's
Mm.
like, yeah. But yeah, having that whole like town behind you is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and like some of the atmospheres we've had, like, because we've moved stadium now as well. We've moved into the football stadium, which is class. It's like I think it's a 15,000 seater, I think.
Oh yeah.
Um, and what they're doing, like, because Rouen has two quite big universities, and they're basically getting like different like groups. So like they might get the business school or the law school, and they basically invite all them down, and they have like, I'm not sure what is it they call it, but basically call it like kind of like a competition to see who can make the most noise at games.
Oh
So
yeah.
they have like this like monitor thing to like check like the decibel level, and then it's like a competition to see who can make the most noise each week. So like you have
Cool.
different like schools coming down to like, and like some of them have been absolutely mental. Like you wonder how they keep going like the whole game. They're literally jumping up and down for the entire game. It's just like it's absolute madness. Like some of the times like you'd be taking a kick a goal, and like they won't realize that there's a kick a goal going. So you're there
Yeah.
kicking. You're like, lads, can you shut up
You're
for
a
a second?
team. It's like, no,
Yeah,
this is, you're
yeah,
not meant to do it for me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, it's good. It brings a good atmosphere, and it's good fun. So yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
That's class. What's the biggest kind of stadium? I know Perpignan were there last year, but what's the biggest one
Yeah.
in Pro D2 you've had in your time there?
So I think I'd say now probably Bayonne. Bayonne, or their
Yeah.
ground is pretty big. Who else?
And they'd be like like getting big
Yeah, they
crowds
fill.
still.
Yeah, they fill out. Yeah, yeah. I think they had about 16,000 for their first game in the
Wow.
Pro D2. Yeah.
It's mad. When you think about the Irish provinces, like Connacht,
Mm,
what, max 7.5.
yeah,
Munster never get anything like 16,000.
yeah,
Well, Ulster, is their capacity now close to that? And then Leinster don't get
mm,
that much for URC.
yeah,
Like it's mad, like the level, like just
yeah,
how
yeah.
big that is.
Yeah, well, especially like it's just there's some areas in France where like rugby is literally the be all and end all. Like it's the number one sport. And like down like Biarritz, Bayonne way, like it's literally rugby, rugby, rugby. So,
Yeah.
because like even last year, like we played Biarritz last game of the season, and it was like that was just still behind closed doors. Like there was no fans allowed in.
Mm.
But like we were driving to the game, and like coming up to the ground, like there were people everywhere, like with like flares and everything. And it was
Wow.
like, this is literally, they'd already qualified for the playoffs. So like it was a dead rubber. Like we weren't going to get relegated. They were already in the playoffs. So like the game didn't have any meaning, but like all their supporters were like lining the streets, like with like
Wow.
flares and everything, and like beeping horns and everything. Like it's mental, absolutely mental. So yeah,
That's
they just love
class.
it. They just love it down there.
Yeah. Do you see yourself in France for the next while? Like, are you comfortable there?
Yeah, I'd say so. I've signed for 3 more years at Rouen.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah. Yeah, I think I'll probably finish up out here, I would imagine. Unless something major came up from Ireland or England, but probably very unlikely at this stage. But you never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm pretty happy playing in France. I enjoy it. It's a nice culture. People are good fun, and yeah, like from a rugby point of view, like I just like how much rugby is kind of valued over here. Like it's like one of the main sports, and it's just like, yeah, there's a lot to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm definitely enjoying it over here. So yeah,
Good stuff. That must be nice getting a 3-year deal, like, and being able to get comfortable,
yeah,
even like moving houses, or like,
yeah,
like you can
yeah.
just chill and
Yeah, no,
get
it's
comfortable.
nice. Yeah, like it is nice just having that security. Just because obviously, like when you're signing 1 and 2 year deals, like it's just like, oh, don't know where I'm going to be this time next year. So yeah, it's nice just to have the security, and then you can kind of just plan a bit more, and like, yeah, you're going to be in one place longer than 24 months, which is nice. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But hey, bud, been unreal catching up. Thanks, Mel, for your
yeah, it's been
time.
good fun. Good fun.